Today is Wednesday, August 13th, 2025, and you have found the Living Youth Podcast. My name is John Robinson. I'm here once again with my podcast co-host, Mr. Wallace Smith. Mr. Smith, we've been teasing a couple of guests, and today they're here.
We have. We said they'd be here 2 weeks ago, and then we were not ready. We didn't have the microphones and stuff. We didn't want to just interpret what they said as they were telling us by sign language or something. And then last week it was just busy and hectic. And then today it's actually still busy and hectic, but they made time for us, yes. And we very much appreciate it. So sitting to my right, we have Mr. Gerald Weston.
Hello.
Hello. And to my left, we have Mr. Jonathan McNair.
Hello.
And today we'll be talking about camp and a little bit about Ellie. Welcome back, and thank you for hanging around. I was just busy telling the guys how sharp they look. I was gonna say something like, "Oh, we all have faces for radio," look at us. But anyways, wonderful to have them here. Thank you guys, both of you gentlemen, very much. In fact, I know it's a really busy day for LE today, Mr. McNair. Right? What officially in the schedule of getting things going? What is today?
We are right in the middle of the orientation week, so we've just come back from a couple of days up in the mountains, up in Blowing Rock, where we had different introductory lectures, as well as the final part of the trip up there is a whitewater rafting trip on the Watauga River.
Oh, wow. And y'all did that?
We did. And that included for almost everybody in the group. We had most everybody ended up jumping into the water, the 50-degree water. It comes out from the bottom of the Watauga Dam. And there are ice cubes that are floating in it. I'll say virtually, but it's very. It is so cold that when you jump in, you can't talk and maybe not even breathe. It hits you like,
wow.
Oh man, it's cold. It's
and this
numbing.
August not quite as hot as in times past.
Yeah, it's a cooler August as well. So I bet that was that yesterday or the day before?
That was yesterday. It was just a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun.
Well, that kept them all very alert for that. Mr. Weston, you didn't decide to join in on that? You didn't go?
Well, I thought that you should explain a little bit about what LE is, because somebody might think that that's Mr. McNair's daughter, Ellie.
That's right. Or just living education. In particular, because living education comprises several different things, but the on-campus aspect of the program. It's August. It's a brand new year. We have a brand new crew of students in, as well as some second-year students that are hanging around. So it was their start.
Is this your seventh?
This is the 8th year, and we have 14 participants this year. And I guess I should correct myself a little bit there. The program is not all about whitewater rafting, and that's a very small part of it. It's about learning the Bible and a lot of other things. And we do a short rafting trip. It's basically about a 2 or 3 hour trip as part of our orientation.
Well, that's nice. And now they're doing the orientation stuff here. We'll get to more. I kind of jumped ahead even by talking about it. We'll get to more LE stuff later in the podcast. We mainly want to talk about camp. If you guys can remember back so far, camp, 3 weeks ago, 3, 4, it's about 3 weeks, 3.5. About a month. Like anyway, something like that last month with the camp program. My wife came back from camp, serving there in terms of taking pictures, and just gosh, she really had a wonderful time and appreciated how well everything went and the time that she had the chance to spend there. On one hand, we were going to talk a bit about the purposes of camp and the principles. However, that's the behind the work video this year, right? At the feast. Mm-hmm. So we're going to save some of that. Consider this sort of a trailer preview of the behind the work video at the feast. But we did get a question from a listener. So we got the following question on Spotify. By the way, my apologies to everyone who comments on Spotify, because I keep forgetting how to access the comments on Spotify. I'm going to blame being old. It's really more a matter of competence, but I am trying to remember. Went out on Spotify, saw a lot of your comments, including this one. And this is a question, just so you gentlemen know, was asked before the camp, but I didn't see it until after the camp. So we're just going to go ahead and ask it anyway. The following came in. I like how he sets the stage. He says, I know the world's totally going up in flames right now, but I think it'd be cool to hear a podcast about the history of teen camp from the days of Worldwide up until the present day, especially since camp's right around the corner. Well, now we're looking backwards at it because I just saw the question. He says, maybe you've done something like that in the past. It's been a while since I went back to the older podcast, but a little history refresh would be cool to listen to. Thank you very much for your question. And both of you, actually, Mr. Weston, you go back quite a ways with the camp programs, including all the way back to Worldwide days, don't you?
Yes. My first camp experience was in 1983, but my wife actually beat me. She was at the very first Living Youth Camp. Actually, it was not Living Youth Camp. She was at the very first camp that the church had, the Radio Church of God at the time. That was 1962. Mrs. Ames was also there as a counselor, and Mrs.
Pyle, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't
Mrs. Wayne Pyle, or Suzanne Pyle was there. I think she was there the second year, if I'm not mistaken. The first year was 8 weeks long. It was in Big Sandy, Texas. And anyone who's been at Texas at that time knows how hot it can be. There was no air conditioning. They lived in these little booths, these metal booths. And so it was pretty miserable that way. But it was 8 weeks long. And it was kind of the result of the approach is more like a boot camp. A lot of the people who led it had come out of World War II, or they'd had influences from people in World War II. So they had to get up at 6 in the morning and do exercises, and they had a lot of inspections. And back in those days, it's hard to imagine for people today, but at camps like that, they would have SWATs. I was in Boy Scouts, and we had SWATs, and my wife got SWATs for having one shoe in front of the other one when she was during an inspection. So they went a bit overboard at the time, but that was in 1962.
Okay.
In 1965, the camp moved to Orr, Minnesota. A member had donated some land, and so they carved out a camp. A wonderful camp, really. It was designed in every way for what we were looking for. It had a girls' point peninsula and a boys' point and swimming area and softball in between. And
so the land was dedicated to the camp. It was just
it
used
was.
for that? Oh, that's
And
nice.
And it was ideal, really, in many ways, except that it was in Minnesota. Minnesota is a wonderful place, but in June in Minnesota, I always went to the first session. It's a tad bit cold. It wasn't as cold as what Mr. McNair was talking about with the rafting trip, but I learned very early on that you can tell the temperature, whether it's really cold or not. If the young people jump in and they start screaming, it's not cold. When you have 24 jump in together and all they do is all of them, not in unison, you know that it's cold.
Now it's serious, right?
Yes. That's usually about 58 or below. So,
Oh, wow.
teaching swimming there was not exactly a cup of tea. It was not my cup of tea, for sure. I hate cold water. But you learn to do what you've got to do. That was in 60. They actually started it in 65. I didn't attend until 83, and then not again until 86, and that was in Big Sandy, where I taught swimming again. And then 87 to 94, I attended at Orr, Minnesota. First session always.
Now, you've mentioned before Mr. Kermit Nelson. Was that in connection with the camp programs?
Yes, Dr. Nelson had worked in the camp, I believe, the very first year, but he wasn't the director at the time. That was back in 62. But in 1986, he took over the camp again. And he was a genius in many ways. He was a very interesting fellow. He was very much attuned to detail. And he was a strategist in every way. So it was a great joy working under him.
Yeah, you've mentioned him really positively. I've never had a chance. I've seen his name on a few things, but I don't. Otherwise, the only thing I know about him is your tales about the smarts and the ideas he brought to camp. And if I don't want to get into the feast film too much, because I know the feast film, there you guys are going to get to talk in that one in terms about the principles of camp. But it does sound like you learned some things with him that you wanted to make sure you definitely brought into the camp programs in the Living Church of God.
Yes, well, as I said, he was quite a strategist, and he could perceive problems before they started and put in place mechanisms that would prevent those problems. For example, I know we mentioned this on the feast film, so I won't get into it too much, but we didn't serve grapes at the feast, not the feast, at the camps, because we know what boys will do when they have grapes in their hands and they have a little bit of extra time and they're standing in line. So things like that, 100 different details that he had along that line.
So kind of the ideas of, rather than trying to solve a bunch of problems, rethink the entire situation. How can we just create a scenario in which those things don't come to be a problem anyway?
Right.
All right.
I might just fill in a little bit more, and then Mr. McNair may want to tell us a little bit about his experience at camp as well. But when the apostasy came in worldwide, we decided that we should have a camp, and that was 1995. And so we planned a camp for Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. And that's the one that we call the Camp from Hell, because it was 98 degrees most every day, or somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe even over 100. It was very high humidity to match the temperature, and there was virtually no wind most of the time. And so I literally did see grown people cry. It was pretty miserable. But for the campers, many thought that was the best camp ever, because they were coming out of an apostasy and they were scattered, and they had the opportunity to be together and to see that there were other teens that were in the same situation. But that was in 1995. 96 and 97, we were in Siler City here in North Carolina, and then in 98, we went to Michigan, where we had the camp for 98 all the way through 2008. And then the next year we had a camp at Voyageurs National Park. It wasn't really a camp. It was more of camping, a canoe trip that we had. And after that, Mr. McNair could fill in more details, because I lost track after that. I decided it was time to retire after 25 years of working camp.
Well, that's what I was about to ask you, Mr. McNair, because you also go back a ways with the camp programs, back to World Way days and such. Could you give us a little bit of your background?
Well, the first time I was exposed to camp was as a camper, and interesting listening to Mr. Weston talk about his experiences. Going in 83, I was as a camper. I was 16 years old in 80, and had a great time. I lived in Wisconsin at the time, and so we drove up to the camp, got out, and boy, from that point on, it was just thrilled with the whole camp experience. We were there for 3 weeks at the time.
Was that the one in Orr, Minnesota?
That was the one at Orr, Minnesota. Right. So you get out, and all these kids, and at that point they had a big gym and canoeing program and water skiing and softball and archery and all the different activities.
I noticed you didn't mention swimming or water polo.
It was too cold. Oh, well, it was a great program. I just loved it. And I called my folks and I said, "You won't believe our dorm. We've got the best dorm, and we're having so much fun. And I love my counselor. He's a great guy. He goes to Ambassador College, and it was a neat experience. It was a great opportunity to see other kids in the church, but also an opportunity to interact with some Ambassador College students and see what they were like. They were real people. They were only a few years at that point ahead of the age that I was, and it put reality to what Ambassador College was like. At that point, my parents went to Ambassador College, but that was far away. But when you see young people who are just a few years older than you, and they're from Ambassador College, and they seem to be pretty neat people, and they're engaged and enthusiastic and all, it was very inspirational. So that was 1980. I did go to Ambassador College, and then my next camp experience was actually in New Zealand. I had the opportunity to go to the New Zealand bike trip. It was twice we did SEP on wheels in New Zealand. once in the North Island, and then the second year we did it, I was able to have the opportunity to go, and it was during the winter break, and between 84 and 85 winter school break. It was a 2-week program, and we had, I don't know, 60 or 65 on as part of the group. We had a support group as well, but I was able to be a team leader on that. It's a 500-mile bike trip, and we did that for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And
it's winter break, but down there it'd be summer, so it's nice and warm.
Well,
Ish.
Ish. This was the South Island of New Zealand, so we started in Christchurch, and we rode down to Queenstown, which is it's in the mountains. So you're riding. I mean, there were some times talk about being warm. It was mild some days, but I can remember one day riding across with a storm in front of us, where I was the team leader. My assistant was in front of the team. I was in the back, and we had four teens between us. And I can remember looking and just realizing, as I'm looking at the cyclists in front of me, that the wind was blowing so hard that we were leaned over at about a 45-degree. It seemed like a 45-degree angle for me in the back, because the wind was so strong. And anyway, we had lots of great experiences. Yeah. We would end the day at a community center or a gym or something, and there'd be a support staff that had a meal all prepared, and we'd be there overnight, and then we go to the next section. We actually went whitewater rafting right in the middle as part of coming back to the theme of whitewater rafting here. We had a great day on a river there, right in the middle of the trip during our rest day. We had the Sabbath, and on Sunday went whitewater rafting, took did a little sightseeing, and then we finished the trip for the remainder the next week over the remainder of the trek back up to Christchurch. What an awesome experience!
Wow.
Again, it was an SCP program, but it was very special because it was a journey, and still have just wonderful memories. In fact, that's where I met Coach Larry Hayworth, who was the leader of the group and the trip. And I say that because he was an assistant. Getting back to Dr. Nelson, he assisted Dr. Nelson in running the camps in Big Sandy for many years. So he's the one that actually gave a good word to Dr. Nelson on my behalf, and enabled me then to go to the next summer to go to Orr
to serve
and
at
work
Orr
as a counselor that summer, which led to cut to the chase here. That led to the following year I was able to go down to Australia and work as a counselor. There were a handful of us that Dr. Nelson asked to go. Gave the opportunity to fly down to Australia and work at the summer camp there that they had at Lake Mugara, which was another unique experience. I could talk about that in detail, and just all the neat things that we did as part of that camp, which was a very different camp from the ones we have in the States, but still the same principles, a lot of the same adventures. The highlight of that I'll mention was a trip where we would go hiking with the group. We'd go hiking over a mountain, and it would end at the bottom of the mountain near the shore of Lake Mugara, where we camped overnight. And the next day we came back in canoes, and where we ended our trip was at the camp itself. So as we were coming across the lake, as we approached the camp, we all did a salute with our paddles, and we twisted our paddles in the air and did a salute. And the whole camp was there cheering as we came in, and we came in at a fast pace and landed. And it was just
that's cool.
They had a real flair for the dramatic, and so it made for a great experience. These are just some of the experiences that I had at camp, and I was able later to go to the Philippines. But so I had lots of different camp experiences that they've colored certainly my thinking about camp because of the variety that I was able to have.
Well, I think it's so neat, and I hope that those who are listening can appreciate that whenever they come to camp with us, this year, and then those who will be coming next year, it's part of a lineage. It's something that the church has been investing in terms of the young lives in the church in these different ways, and to see the continuity in you guys bringing some of those things from lessons of the past and experiences of the past. That it's the fella up there doing the Christian living class or organizing the classes and keeping the camp is someone who's been exactly where they are, with their own counselor and working these things. It's really neat. So moving to this year, you're back in Texas, where you said it was so hot in previous years, and having grown up in Texas, Mr. Robinson and I have a great deal of intimate experience in terms of life in Texas.
Yes.
And it does get very hot, but this year, everything I heard was that it was merciful to everybody. How was the weather and such this year at camp?
Yeah, it was quite nice, actually. It did get in the 90s, but I think 98 was the hottest that it got. And I think the year before or 2 years before, it was like 106. So you can't complain about that. And actually, they have air conditioning there at that camp. I mean, you hardly call it camp when you've got air conditioning, but they had it turned down so low that some of the folks nearly froze to death, and so it actually felt pretty good when you went outside.
Yeah. So wow, that's actually very different Texas experience. Looking at the weather, because my wife was there. So I mean, I love you guys. Don't get me wrong, but my wife was there, so I was definitely watching the temperatures and such. And I just couldn't believe what a wonderful Texas couple of weeks it was. I mean, it seemed like a real blessing for everybody there. In terms of the staff that was there, it seemed as though, and let me know, I could be wrong, but that a number of your staff members were former campers themselves. Was that the case?
A number of them. It's quite interesting because people that we worked with as campers back in the 90s and 2000s are now grown up. They're staff members. In some cases, they have their own kids. We have, I think of one individual who was a camper, and now his son is married.
Wow.
And so it's quite interesting when you see that continuity. It's hard to believe that much time goes by.
Yeah.
But life is short.
Now I know you had tasks divvied up with various areas of responsibility, and I know seeing on the staff in terms of the ministry that were helping in different responsibilities, there was Mr. Ryan Dawson, Mr. Brandon Fall, and Mr. Chet Carpenter. What were their different responsibilities at camp this year?
Excuse me. Mr. Carpenter is responsible for overseeing the kitchen, all the kitchen activities, and his wife assists him specifically with the purchasing. So they make a really great team. But
he was not doing carpentry. That just seems like a mistake.
Oh, that was a good one. That was very funny. We have no carpentry program, so he can only construct the meals for us.
But we did have a carpentry program.
Okay.
That was the Men's Life Rolls.
That was. I'm trying to think of a pun for Mr. Fogg's name that would fit with the program and the woodworking he was doing, but this could
we
go
should
off
probably
on a
move
tangent.
on then. Yeah, that's right. Well, I did hear that the kitchen was wonderful this year and that things went really, really well. So so Mr. Fall and Mr. Dawson.
Mr. Fall was responsible for logistics, which is a catch-all for overseeing the custodial area, as well as some of the responsibilities really that provide the nuts and bolts of keeping the camp going, making sure that all the water is available, different water jugs at different spots throughout the camp, making the inventory available to all the staff. There's a lot of tasks that don't fall under a sport area or an educational activity area. You really need to have somebody who can take responsibility for those, and he's done a great job with putting together a staff that works with those. And then Mr. Dawson works a great deal over the course of the year ahead of time with the schedules, which he put a good bit of time into, along with Mr. and Mrs. Penman, who work a lot on the back end of all the registration, and there's a lot of work that goes into that really allows us to function with all the campers, and so there's a really a solid team that has been assembled of people who want to be there, they want to help, they want to do not just do anything, because we use that as a moniker to I'll do anything mentality, which is great, but we have to also recognize that we can't do everything. And so that means that we need to be willing to do anything, but to do the things that we really fit best at. And that means that there's got to be guidance and oversight. And Again, everybody can't just do everything they want to do. They have to be willing and able to do those areas that have a need and they have expertise. But I just wanted to follow up on what your comment before about the camp and how it has been a legacy that has lasted for years and years. One of the things that really sets apart outstanding camps, I'm just talking across the board, not just with, let's say, our camp, but camps in general, as per comments that I've heard at different camp conferences, is the establishment of traditions. And I listened to a speech one time by a speaker who talked about his visits to different camps across the country. And in his role, he worked for the YMCA and visited dozens and dozens and dozens of their camps. And he said, what identifies a great camp and sets apart the great camps from other camps are the fact that they have established traditions that are meaningful and that are important and that really are passed from generation to generation. And he talked about one camp that he went to and watched how they had a big bonfire, I guess, at the end of their camp session. This big bonfire, and the kids would stand around the bonfire, and behind them would be the parents who would be there to pick up their kids or for the last day ceremonies. Behind them would be the grandparents, and literally the grandparents and parents had tears streaming down their face as they watched their kids be part of a ceremony that was the end of the camp for them that they had gone through when they were a kid, and even the grandparents had gone through. And I think about that because we have traditions that are meaningful. We have traditions about the way we do things and what we hold up as important and how we treat each other and in many different areas. But that legacy is not just a legacy of having camp. It's a legacy of a continuity of important, meaningful traditions. And that's what makes camp, I think, well worth the effort that's put into it by all of our team members each and every year.
I remember when you came when I was doing the preteen camp in Missouri, and when you came to observe and to give advice and to help contribute to shaping the program, and I appreciated all that. And you talked about that very story about the bonfire. And I remember thinking, okay, what can we establish as traditions in Missouri, to kind of, I always wanted to feed the program and, have kids progress through it. So came up with what I thought was a really good tradition where on the last night of camp, they would go around and see, oh, look, here's what we did archery, here's what we did this, then we'd come back and have something else. That part did not work out because we gave them glow sticks so they could see. Yeah, preteens and glow sticks. There was no paying attention.
Is it like handing out grapes to all the boys?
That's right. However, the one thing that did stick, and we did it the next couple years, was we'd have all the kids who were 12, so their last year in the preteen camp, as a camper, but then all the staff members who had previously been at a camp, and so now they're serving a camp, but they were previously campers. We had them line up on either side before the final evening reflection, and then they would kind of cross each other and shake each other's hands. And to try to encourage this idea that, we hope that you will go on and eventually serve. And I remember after Mr. Hilgenberg took over that camp and was doing it, and he had them do something similar. I was like, yeah, maybe it would, still go. I have no idea if they're still doing that, but I appreciated so much that sense of continuity that you talked about, and hoping that some of that could be instilled so that the campers are looking that they're a part of something larger that has gone on before them, and nowadays even with their parents and what does it feel like? That question might be out of nowhere, but for both of you, you mentioned earlier, what does it feel like to see kids at camp when you knew you had their parents as campers, or not grandparents? I don't know if we're there yet, but maybe had their grandparents as staffers or something. What does it feel like to be able to see something like that?
One interesting thing that happened this year was I recognized that there were those who had parents at camp before. And so I just asked all the campers during one of the Christian living classes or some other occasion, I don't remember the exact occasion, how many of you had parents who attended one of our previous camps? And it was, 40 to 50% raised their hands. I was shocked by that. I had no idea that it was that many. So it shows that there is a continuity. It shows that there's something good happening, and we're retaining a lot of people as well, young people in the church. They're growing up, they're having their own children, and their children are coming to camp, and we'll be seeing third-generation campers before too much longer. And I'm speaking just in the Living Church of God. I'm not talking about, or say Global Living Church of God. I'm just talking about since worldwide. If we go back to worldwide, we'd have far more. But I think we're really retaining a lot of the young people. One of the things that I thought was really good this year was that we have a transition. I'm over the Living Youth program overall, but I asked Mr. McNair to be the director of the Living Youth camp there in Texas this year. And he did a wonderful job in communicating with those individuals who came, our ministers who he'd been working with for months in advance, as well as other department heads. And they had meetings, and everything was planned out very well. It was very well organized. And I think that was a tribute to what he's done. Mr. Dawson has done a wonderful job the last several years in terms of putting together our notebooks that we use with all the schedules in them. There are a tremendous number of schedules. They had meetings, regularly, and all that work that goes into the camp starts months in advance. It doesn't just happen the last minute. We don't just invite a minister and a department head here and somebody else to run this program last minute. We have people who have been there working really since the last camp.
Something I want to throw in, we talk about those who have been at camp before, their parents, and even how many have been involved in the program. And boy, I have to say, it's frankly, as I look and I see some of those who were younger, who were when I was involved with camping years ago, and they were teenagers. Frankly, sometimes I look out and I see somebody who didn't like camp. Actually, they said they would tell me that, no, I didn't like camp, and they only come once, maybe twice, and they don't come back because they didn't like it for one reason or another. But now they're there, and they're involved in an apartment. Their kids are there. And so what that tells me is that, sometimes the things that you do and the effort you put into things, it doesn't mean that at that moment, it's like with your kids, you may be telling your kids to eat their green beans. They may not like it at the moment, but that doesn't mean it's not good for them. In years to come, they'll appreciate it, and they'll be telling their kids to eat their green beans too. So it's that's very gratifying to see that, and that means that it's meaningful, whether it's appreciated in the moment or not. That being said, I do hope people realize, and I think they do, that it's not a secret club. It's not for those that come and they've never been there before, and we do have those that are new in the church. We have, I can think of this year, those who have frankly just begun attending church not long before camp, and they applied and they came. They're able to, I would hope, and I do believe that they can catch on to the value, and they can become part of the team. They can become part of the family. They're welcome to be part of the family, and you don't have to have parents or grandparents who have attended camp to be able to love it, enjoy it, and appreciate it. You can get on the train as well, and I'd like that to be said because I wouldn't want any newer people who have not, whose kids have not been to camp to feel like, well, I haven't been in the church that long, so they're not going to enjoy it or be welcome, because that's not the case at all. It's welcoming with the way, frankly, the traditions that we build into it are such that those who don't know anybody, who don't know a single soul, who know no other kids and come in there, the way the system works is that they're welcomed, and they are embraced, and they're part of the program, and they can go home with friends that they didn't have, as opposed to feeling left out because they don't know anybody when they come. That's the program is really meant to include and welcome those who are newer as well.
Well, I always thought that was one of the greatest benefits of camp was the camaraderie, and that if you're out there living in the world, whether you're going to public school or not, but either way, the world is not doing what we're doing. and sometimes you might feel isolated and like maybe we're strange or weird or something, and then you get to go to camp and you're suddenly with a whole bunch of other kids that keep the feast and keep the Sabbath. And I always thought that was a huge benefit to know that you were not alone, that there were other kids that kept the same believe the same thing you did.
And I appreciate you highlighting that, because that would be a real mistake to come across. It's not a club, like you said. It's not like, oh, there's the camp people and they always do things together. I remember our first time being a part of any of the camps. My oldest son had just gotten old enough for the preteen camps, and had heard a lot of things about camp, and it was kind of always the same people talking about it, but that's really because it was a small congregation and none of us had yet come to that point. So now I was at that point, and I was personally kind of anxious. I was not a camper. I used to joke I was the guy that the team going into the mountains would bring along in case there's a terrible accident and you got to cook somebody for brisket, and you think, ooh, that guy, he'd make some juicy brisket. But in this case, I was never an outdoors guy, but went and was just absorbed really quickly, and it was wonderful to see my children making connections with others. I don't remember any kind of sense amongst any of the staff that, well, we've been here for a while and you're new, we're going to haze you or give you something, it's going to take you some time. No, I think it was real quickly. Things were made so you felt like you were a part of things, and the traditions that were there, if anything, they fought against that kind of cliquish feeling. Like the first time there in Michigan, when you guys were running the camp up there, everything was designed to bring you in, to make you a part of things. And so I greatly appreciate the effort that both of you put into making sure that environment is there, so that that was one of the questions I did want to ask before you left. If you have say a parent out there sitting on the fence, maybe their son or daughter is turning 13 next year, or maybe 14, they've already been 13, but they haven't been before. Maybe as we wrap up talking about camp, because I would like to talk about LE, hopefully, if you have some time before you go. But and they're trying to decide, well, should I really send I've never done anything like that before. What would you say to a parent out there who's considering sending their son or daughter to camp next year?
Well, I would just say do it. Life, you only walk through life one time. I've found in my lifetime that when I've had opportunities and didn't take them, that oftentimes the opportunity would never come up again. At the same time, things that I did do that the opportunity came, I didn't regret. I remember always wanting to go hot air ballooning, and so we were at the feast one year, and somebody asked us about it. They had some hot air ballooning in the area, and so we did it. And I don't regret that. I won't say that I couldn't do it now if I really set my heart into doing it. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of things in life come your way, and it's best to take advantage of them when you do. And there's nothing ventured, nothing gained, as they say. So it depends a little bit on the young person. Some are not mature enough at age 13. A parent knows his child better than anybody else, but at the same time, we have a lot of helicopter parents in today's world who are afraid to let their children loose. So when someone's 13, especially 14 or 15, give them a chance to try it. And what we find is that right now, if anything, we have delayed adolescence. We have young people who don't want to be workers. They want to be campers as long as they can, and that becomes a problem too.
And I would add that the goal of a parent, ultimately, of a wise parent, is to teach and train and work with their child towards the day that they need to be independent. And this gives a great opportunity at a time in life, in their young life, when they are beginning to be able to be a bit more independent. Camp is a great opportunity to take the training wheels off a little bit and allow their son or their daughter to be away from them. And I say be away from them because when they go to camp, they're not going to be in a position where mommy or daddy is going to be holding their hand all through the day. That's not what camp is about. Right. But it is a safe place. It's a place where parents can trust. And I say that, with every dogged determination that I can put into it, that we are going to take care of their son or daughter. We're going to protect them. And so it's a great opportunity for them to allow their son or daughter to practice a certain amount of independence. Yes, maybe having to deal with a little bit of discomfort, maybe having to deal with people that they don't necessarily click with, that they have to learn to deal with. All the things that happen in a camp situation with just with other people. Maybe deal with the discomfort of hot weather. Maybe deal whatever it might be, having to share their space with other people. All that stuff. But it's a time and place where the young person can experience and practice some independence. Maybe they'll come back home and they'll say, "Mom, Dad, there's this person. Wow, I don't know. They said something to me that I thought was not very nice." Well, that's life, isn't it? So maybe it's a time for a parent to say, "Well, did you talk with them about it? Did you say that wasn't, I don't appreciate that?" And no, well then next time when you're around somebody like that, you can say that. And the parents that, or a counselor, this type of thing, a counselor may say, well, a person said something or what have you. And so they have a chance to then respond to that person and say, "Hey, I don't appreciate you being not nice to me." And the other person oftentimes will say, "Well, I'm sorry." Okay, now you've learned to deal with a little bit of conflict outside the realm of the comfort zone. So my point anyway is it's a great opportunity for parents to give their children an opportunity to have practice a bit of independence in a safe area. And so it's I would, like Mr. Weston says, we sure should encourage them to take advantage of it. I might add one thing for those who are listening or those who ultimately bump into information about camp and all that. A member may feel like, well, it doesn't have to do with me because I don't have any kids. I don't have any grandkids. There's nobody in my congregation that's young enough to go to camp. But I would say to any person like that, thank you. Because whether you realize it or not, you're supporting camp. Because it's the tithes and offerings of our members that provide this opportunity for our young people. And so every single member is supporting it. And frankly, I would encourage all of our members then to be familiar with what they're supporting and be able to pray about it and ask God's blessing upon it, because this is the future generation of the church. These young people will provide those future leaders for the church. And just like the children of Israel who followed Joshua into the promised land lived with experiences that brought them to the place that they were loyal to God, and we would hope that our children can. So I just wanted to encourage those who might feel like they have nothing to do with camp, that they still will be interested in what it's about, and we thank them.
I might mention here that kind of a segue to the next section. They come as preteen campers, and I had the opportunity to attend a preteen camp this year at West Virginia. First time in several years, and what a wonderful experience. I realize now I've got to learn the names of all these young people, especially here in Charlotte. I've never tried to memorize all the names of our youngest ones because they change so quickly. But they started out as preteens, and they had a wonderful experience. The happiness, the smiles there. I told them one of the greatest sounds was during Christian Living class when I heard Bibles or pages turning in their Bibles. They actually could find certain things there, and they had their Bibles, physical Bibles, as opposed to electronic ones. But they go from there, and sometimes they help out as staff members for the preteen camp as they pass along. They end up going to the teen camp, then they become a high school staff member, and then a young adult, and moving along. And then they come to living education in some cases, or they attend the Living for Tomorrow, which is a program for young people. And it's really a funnel. It starts at preteen camp and goes on up to the Living for Tomorrow and living education, and hopefully they'll really buy into this way of life that we are teaching and that their parents want them to learn, and become solid church members and contributors to the church as solid pillars in the future.
Yeah, you mentioned about just that. I looked down our hall at Mr. Ben Graham serving here in the editorial department, and I remember when he was going to the camps, and I remember when I was his pastor, and I had him try to contribute to a presentation after services to the congregation, recognizing how many of them don't know what goes on. So I had him plan it out, and they draw on the whiteboard a map of the Michigan, camp and such. And then I look at, Tyler, down the hall, also the same thing. And your comment about the opportunity for parents to allow their children to not have mom and dad around immediately, so they can learn a little bit more of independence, but in a safe place where they're still surrounded by ministry and people who love them, and an environment that's actually designed to be, a place that's a little protective, but still while they're stepping out. Is use that as a transition to talk about LE. Do you see something like that similar in terms of LE serving a purpose like that? You've got a world out there that's, now that the new year is starting, so many. I used to be a high school teacher, and I remember how the school just pressed all these kids into some college mold, like you got to leave here, you got to go to college. And honestly, I've seen that track just be a not very fruitful track in a good way. I mean, a lot of those kids I saw being funneled off to college, and that was in the 90s, before things have gone off the rails as much as they have. I saw so many students graduating at 18 that honestly I did not think of many of them as ready for life on their own, in terms of the decisions and things being faced that they would be faced with in college. Do you see, does living education serve in any kind of way in that regard for your kind of a post-high school life in a similar way to what camp does, as an opportunity to kind of stretch your wings a bit without being shoved off a cliff, so to speak?
No, definitely. That's what that's what it's designed to be. Mr. Weston early on we encouraged our thinking to be what can we do for our young people? How can we serve the needs of the church? Not what we might just sit in a room and think, well, what should we do? Should we create a college, or what kind of program should we create that we just like because it sounds neat? And when you look at the needs of the church, we do have a lot of young people who are in that age who desperately need to have a foundation that will allow them to be able to face the onslaught of the ways of thinking and the philosophy and and it's mixed, because young people can go to college and it can be a mixture. There are things that you can learn that would be great, but oftentimes it's interwoven with ideas about whether it's evolution or human psychology, all the humanistic views that are part of our philosophy and thinking today. So the whole idea from the beginning was what would best serve the church. And with Living Education, part of it is an online index, you might say, of topics that can be available to anybody in the church, which is what we're working on with the online program. But there is nothing like a face-to-face education with teachers who can listen to you, talk, discuss, and then teach and instruct. That in-person classroom experience that's not that it can't be matched, frankly, with online learning. Online learning is fine. But it's second best to face-to-face learning with a mentor. So yes, 100%. The program that we're building with Living Education allows a young person to mature, to be able to solidify in their beliefs about God and the Bible, and they're challenged. So they learn to be able to face the challenge, but they're prepared. And again, also, yes, there's a maturing process, and I think everybody around here that works here at headquarters, when they see the new students come in, and a year later they sit and talk with them, they can see there's been a change. Now, that it may sound like an exaggeration, but 9 months in a young person's life, when they're 18, 19, 20, 21, 9 months is a lot of change can take place. A lot of serious thinking about life can take place when you're in an environment where you're challenged to think about life and what life is all about and what life really means. So anyone from that point going on and getting further training is framed by the things that we find in the Bible.
I just want to add in really quickly. It's kind of anecdotal, but I completely agree with what you just said about the maturity. In fact, when today was the first day where the noise level went up considerably and the energy level and people moving up and down the hallways, and I was like, I took a moment and reflected on it, and I thought, fresh new batch. It's like, because they will be different, very different in 9 months. And so them actually the new class, as it were, coming in this year reminded me of where they start. And so anyway, I've seen it year in and year out.
Yeah,
they really do mature and progress.
Yeah, I can appreciate having a couple sons who've been through, and David, my youngest, the most recent. And the difference, I mean, he was a chain smoker beforehand, and no, I'm just kidding. He was a good kid, but he wanted to apply because he'd already started college, just a first semester, but he recognized that there was an opportunity to gain in some maturity and experience in an environment where he was going to gain a foundation, where gap years, so, as they're called, gap years are kind of all the rage here and there, but a lot of times so we can go see Europe, or we can do, just really enjoy some me time. Versus this is really an investment where you get to spend some time with other young people in the church, all of you geared towards the same goals, learning the same things. And I know in David's case, we've all talked about it and we've seen it. It was definitely a profitable experience for him. And he's back in his studies. He's studying accounting. And you can even tell even in his work, he's not studying the Bible at North Carolina. He's studying accounting. And yet, as he does so, it's his approach to his studies even so much more self-discipline. And really, really appreciate all the investment in him in that sense.
If I might add that, I think it works on both ends. So, for example, right now, I don't know what the current statistics are, but the average college student, last I heard, changes their major at least 3 times. Yeah. Because honestly, even though they're pushed, high school students are pushed by their guidance counselors to choose a career, and to choose a path, and frankly, because you have to in order to get all your classes lined up, But so my point in saying that is that to have another year to be able to establish oneself in the Bible and the most fundamental, important principles of life, and also think about where you want to go in life, what you want to study, what topics you want to study in college that you might use for a job, or to as a wife to be able to enrich your life and your life of your family, and so on, or provide skills to be able to have employment. But to give a little more time to know oneself is actually very, very helpful, and it can be very efficient in the use of resources later, as opposed to thinking I've got to rush into college. Yeah. On the other hand, those who are already dedicated to a trade or have in mind what they want to do, it's not going to hurt to take one more year to balance out one's study and so on, because once you get into some of those courses, when you get into the courses, immediately following that is job and work. Many times you get a job offer or something like that, and you won't be able to come back and do something like this once you're down that path. So I think whether one is geared towards looking at the trades or geared toward looking at higher education, it's still beneficial to go ahead and get that foundation, learn how to live in an independent way, and do that early on.
And, with all the good that comes from the learning experience that way, there's also the learning experience of interaction with one another. And I think that's very important for our young people. They find out what others are like. They are able to interact, girls and guys, and they get to know each other in ways that they don't just pair off where they might someplace else. We try to help them not to pair off. We can't always say that doesn't happen. Kids will be kids, or adults will be adults too. But it's a wonderful experience. It's a fun experience. And to be able to spend time with other young people in the environment that they have, it isn't all work. It's a lot of fun. And the emphasis isn't fun, but nevertheless, it's going to be a byproduct of the whole process.
Yeah, I can't think of a year that has come and gone where you look at the kids at the end of the year versus the beginning, like Mr. Robinson was just talking about, and you don't see some kids that became good friends. I mean, they really form a real tight bonds, and all the things, whitewater trips, suffering through your exams, all the different things. And it's just wonderful to see them kind of come together as really a bit of a family, and then go home, but knowing they still have those and staying in touch. It's been really neat to see. thank you guys for spending so much time with us. Unless there's anything else that you have to add, I think that's it. We'll let you get back to your very busy jobs. All right. Thank you. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
opportunity.
Smith and Robinson.